The transport ship moved slowly through the darkness of space toward the massive station ahead. Juan pressed his face against a small window and watched as Nexus Prime grew larger. The station was bigger than anything he had ever seen. It looked like a small city floating in the stars. "First time seeing it?" asked Mira, the cadet sitting next to him. She was also human, one of only 12 humans chosen for the Galactic Military Academy. "Yes," Juan replied quietly. "It's huge." Mira nodded. "They say it holds over 2 million beings from 40 different species. We're about to be very outnumbered." The other human cadets sat together in the back of the transport. They all looked nervous. Earth had only joined the galactic community 5 years ago. Before that, humans had no idea there were other intelligent species in the universe. Now, 12 young humans were about to train alongside aliens at the most important military school in the galaxy. The docking bay was enormous. As the humans walked down the ramp, they saw their first alien cadets. A group of tall, lizard-like beings with green scales stood near the entrance. They were Trainee, one of the oldest species in the galaxy. Each one was over 7 feet tall, with sharp teeth and claws. "Look at the little pink ones," one of the Trainee said in perfect English. "Are those the humans we heard about?" Another Trainee laughed. "They look so soft. No scales, no claws, no armor. How did they even survive long enough to build spaceships?" The humans tried to ignore the comments, but it was hard. They had trained for months on Earth, but now they felt very small and weak compared to these aliens. A metal voice spoke from behind them. "Welcome to Nexus Prime." The humans turned to see a robot-like being with 4 arms and glowing red eyes. "I am Unit 7742. I will show you to your quarters." As they walked through the station, the humans saw more alien species. There were the Morvac, who looked like walking tanks with thick armor covering their entire bodies. The Vorthok were even more frightening, with 8-foot-tall frames and razor-sharp claws that could cut through metal. The Zephyrians floated in the air with their wing-like appendages, never touching the ground. "This is the main training hall," Unit 7742 explained as they entered a massive room. "Here you will learn combat techniques, strategy, and military history." The training hall was filled with equipment that looked deadly. There were weapon racks, combat simulators, and obstacle courses that seemed designed to test every possible skill. Hundreds of alien cadets were already training, their movements fast and powerful. Over there, Unit 7742 pointed to a corner. "Is where you will begin your basic training. Commander Vextel will be your instructor." Commander Vextel was a Trainee with dark green scales and many scars across his face. He had been a warrior for over 50 years and had fought in the border wars against the hegemony. When he saw the humans approaching, he stopped what he was doing and stared at them. He said in a deep voice, "These are the famous humans, the species that somehow built faster than light ships in just a few hundred years." He walked around the group, looking at each human carefully. "You look very weak. Are you sure you belong here?" "Yes, sir," one said, standing straight. "We passed all the interest tests." "Tests?" Vextel laughed. "Yes, I heard about those. You did well on the written parts and the simulations. But this is not a classroom. This is where warriors are made." Pointed to a Vorthok cadet who was lifting weights that would crush a human. "That is Grax. He can break steel with his bare hands." And over there, he pointed to a Morvac, is Jan. "His armor can stop plasma bolts. What can you humans do?" The humans looked at each other. They had asked themselves the same question many times. Every other species seemed to have natural advantages. The Trainee had speed and claws. The Morvac had armor and strength. The Vorthok had size and power. Humans had none of these things. "We learn," one said, finally. We adapt. Adapt. Vextol raised an eyebrow. That is not much of a weapon. Maybe not, Juan replied. But it's what we have. The first week of training was brutal. The humans struggled with equipment designed for much larger and stronger beings. The obstacle courses were too high, the weapons too heavy, and the training uniforms too big. The other cadets laughed at them constantly. Look at the human trying to climb the wall, a Vorthok cadet said during one exercise. He can barely reach the first handhold. Maybe we should build them a smaller course, another alien suggested, something more their size. But one and the other humans kept trying. When the wall was too high, they found ways to help each other climb. When the weapons were too heavy, they learned to use them differently. When the training moved too fast, they stayed late to practice. Commander Vextol watched all of this with interest. At first, he thought the humans would quit after a few days. Most species who couldn't keep up with the training left quickly. The humans never gave up. They failed at many exercises, but they always came back the next day to try again. They are stubborn, he told Master Sergeant Throck, a Morvac instructor. I have never seen cadets work so hard just to stay average. Perhaps, Throck replied. That is their strength. I have heard stories about their home planet. It is a world of constant conflict and competition. Maybe that taught them something we do not understand. As the weeks passed, the humans began to improve. They were still smaller and weaker than the other cadets, but they started finding ways to succeed. One, in particular, showed an unusual ability to solve problems that stumped others. During one training exercise, cadets had to capture a flag from the top of a tall tower while being attacked by automated defense systems. Most species use brute force, charging through the defenses and taking heavy damage. But Juan studied the pattern of the attacks for an hour, then found a way to disable the entire system by removing one small component. Interesting, Vextol muttered as he watched. The human did not fight the defenses. He made them fight themselves. Okay. The other cadets began to notice this, too. The humans approached every problem differently than anyone else. They didn't try to overpower obstacles, okay? They found ways around them. They didn't rush into battles, okay? They planned and waited for the right moment. Why do you think so much, guess? The Vorthok cadet asked Juan one day after training. Thinking is slow, fighting is fast. Maybe, Juan said, adjusting his oversized training gear. But thinking can make up for a lot of things we don't have. Like what? Like claws. Like armor. Like being 8 feet tall. Grax laughed. You will never be 8 feet tall, human. You will never have claws or armor. You will always be weak. You're probably right, Juan agreed. But maybe being weak teaches you things that being strong doesn't. By the end of the first month, the humans had earned a grudging respect from some of their classmates. They were still at the bottom of most physical rankings, but they had stopped failing completely. More importantly, they had stopped being treated as a joke. Commander Vextol filed his first report about the human cadets. They are not the strongest or fastest cadets I have trained, he wrote, but they may be the most determined. I am beginning to understand why this species survived long enough to reach the stars. They do not give up, even when giving up would be reasonable. That night, as Juan lay in his bunk, he looked out at the stars through the small window. Somewhere out there was Earth, where humans had fought wars for thousands of years, where they had learned that sometimes the smallest fighter could win. If they were smart enough and stubborn enough, he was beginning to realize that maybe the Academy hadn't seen everything humans could do. Not yet. The alarm bells rang through the Academy at dawn. Cadets rushed to the main assembly hall, still wearing their sleeping clothes. Commander Vextol stood at the front with several other high-ranking officers. His expression was serious. Today, we have a special visitor, he announced. Warlord Korith of the Vorthok Empire is coming to inspect our academy. You will show him the respect he deserves." The alien cadets whispered excitedly among themselves. Everyone knew about Warlord Korith. He was the most feared warrior in the galaxy. Stories said he had never lost a fight and had conquered 17 star systems for the Vorthok Empire. He has killed over 1,000 enemies in personal combat, Grax told the other cadets proudly. He is the greatest Vorthok warrior alive. Juan listened quietly. He had read about Korith in the Academy's history files. The warlord was famous for challenging leaders of other species to single combat. Those who refused were called cowards. Those who accepted usually died. "Why is he coming here?" asked Mira. "Diplomatic inspection," Commander Vextel explained. "The Vorthok Empire wants to see how we train the next generation of galactic military leaders." The Academy spent the morning preparing for the visit. The training halls were cleaned until they sparkled. The cadets put on their best uniforms. Even the normally relaxed instructors seemed nervous. At noon, Korith's ship arrived. It was black and covered in spikes, designed to look as threatening as possible. The warlord himself was even more intimidating than the story suggested. He stood nearly 9 feet tall, with muscles that looked like they could crush steel. His natural armor was polished to a mirror shine, and his claws were longer than human fingers. "Welcome to Nexus Prime Academy," Commander Vextel said with a formal bow. Korith looked around the docking bay with cold eyes. "I have heard interesting things about this place. They say you are training warriors from many species together, even some very weak species." "We believe that diversity makes us stronger," Vextal replied carefully. "Diversity," Quarith laughed. "A nice word for weakness. Show me these warriors you are training." The tour began in the main training hall. Quarith watched as different species demonstrated their combat skills. The Draknari showed their speed and agility. The Morvac displayed their defensive techniques. The Zafrians performed aerial maneuvers that seemed to defy gravity. "It's impressive," Korith said after each demonstration. "These are true warriors." Then came the human demonstration. 1 and 11 other humans performed a combat exercise they had been practicing for weeks. They moved in perfect coordination, covering each other's weaknesses and combining their efforts to overcome obstacles that would have stopped any of them alone. But to the watching aliens, it looked slow and weak compared to the raw power they had just seen. Several cadets in the audience began to laugh. The sound echoed through the hall. "What are those?" Korith asked, pointing at the humans. "Those are our human cadets," Commander Vextel explained. "They are new to the galactic community, but they show great potential." Korith stared at the humans for a long moment. They look like prey animals, small, weak, defenseless. "Are you sure they belong in a military academy?" "They have passed all the same tests as other cadets," Vextel said. "Test on paper." Korith waved his hand dismissively. "But where I come from, we test warriors in combat, real combat." The hall fell silent. Everyone knew what was coming next. "I challenge any of these humans to face me in single combat," Korith announced loudly. "Let us see if they truly deserve to be here." The silence stretched on. This was a nightmare scenario for the human delegation. Korith had never lost a fight, and he outweighed any human by hundreds of pounds. But refusing would be seen as cowardice by the entire galactic community. "The challenge is not fair," Commander Vextel said carefully. "There is too much difference in size and strength." "Fair," Korith laughed. "War is not fair. Combat is not fair. If these humans want to be warriors, they must prove they can fight like warriors." The other alien cadets began to murmur excitedly. This was better than any training exercise. They would finally see what humans were really made of. One stepped forward, I accept your challenge. The hall erupted in shocked voices. The other humans stared at him in horror. Mira grabbed his arm. You can't, she whispered. He'll kill you. Maybe, Juan said quietly, but someone has to accept. If we refuse, humans will never be respected in the galaxy. This is madness, another human cadet said. He's 3 times your size. Yes, Juan agreed, but that doesn't mean I can't win. Korth looked pleased. Finally, a human with some courage, even if it is foolish courage. Commander Vextel pulled Juan aside. You don't understand what you're agreeing to. Korth has killed opponents in friendly matches before. He always claims it was an accident. I understand, Juan said. I still accept. Why? Vextel asked. This is not just about you. This is about all humans. If you lose badly, it will affect how the galaxy sees your entire species. Juan looked at the other humans, then at the alien cadets who were watching him with mixtures of pity and excitement. That's exactly why I have to try. I don't, they'll always think we're weak. You are weak, Vextel said bluntly. Compared to him, you are a child. Maybe, Juan said. But I'm not just fighting for myself. I'm fighting for every human who will come after me. For every human who dreams of exploring the stars. They need to know that being small doesn't mean being helpless. The news of the challenge spread through the academy like wildfire. Within hours, it had reached every corner of the station. Betting pools started immediately. Odds were so heavily against one that most bookmakers refused to take bets on him at all. This is going to be a massacre, one Trainee cadet said. I almost feel sorry for the human, another agreed. He seems brave, but bravery won't help him against Korth. The alien instructors were also concerned. Master Sergeant Throck, the Morvac warrior, approached Commander Vextel after the announcement. Perhaps we should cancel this, he suggested. The human has courage, but this is suicide. I tried, Vextel replied, but Korth made it a formal challenge. According to galactic law, it cannot be withdrawn without losing honor. Then, we're about to watch a young cadet die for no reason. Maybe, Vextel said. But I have been watching these humans for months. They are not like other species. They don't give up, even when they should. That will not help against Korth's claws. No, Vextel agreed. But it might help with something else. That evening, Korth gave interviews to reporters from across the galaxy. He spoke confidently about Vorthok's superiority and the foolishness of allowing weak species into military academies. This human is brave but stupid, he said. Tomorrow, I'll show the galaxy why the Vorthok are the greatest warriors. It will be a lesson in the natural order of things. Do you think the human has any chance? A reporter asked. Korth laughed so hard his armor rattled. A chance? He is a soft, pink creature with no claws, no armor, and no strength. What chance could he possibly have? Meanwhile, Juan sat alone in the Academy's library, reading everything he could find about Vorthok combat techniques. He studied videos, of course previous fights, looking for any weakness, any pattern he could exploit. Mira found him there at midnight. You should be sleeping, she said. I'll sleep after tomorrow, Juan replied without looking up from his screen. Are you scared? She asked. Terrified, he admitted. But fear can be useful if you don't let it control you. What if you lose? Then I lose, Juan said simply. But I won't make it easy for him. The other cadets think you're going to die tomorrow. They might be right, Juan said. But my grandmother always told me that size isn't everything. She fought in wars when she was young. She said the biggest enemy isn't always the most dangerous one. What did she mean? Juan finally looked up from his reading. She said that big enemies expect you to fight them the same way they fight each other. When you don't, they get confused, okay? And confused enemies make mistakes. Korath will make mistakes. I think, Juan said slowly, that Korath has never fought a human before. He doesn't know what we're capable of, because we don't know what we're capable of ourselves. As the night grew late, Juan continued his research. He wasn't just studying Korath's fighting style, he was studying human military history, reading about battles where smaller forces had defeated larger ones through strategy, endurance, and pure, stubborn determination. Tomorrow, he would find out if those lessons could help him against the most feared warrior in the galaxy. The news of the challenge spread across the galaxy overnight. Within hours, reporters from dozens of worlds were arriving at Nexus Prime. The Academy's communication systems were overloaded with requests for interviews and betting information. In the Academy's main cafeteria, alien cadets gathered around their meal tables, talking excitedly about the upcoming fight. The conversation was always the same. How long do you think it will last? Asked a Trainee cadet. 30 seconds, replied his friend. Be less if Korath decides to end it quickly. I heard humans break easily, said a Zephyrian. Their bones are very weak compared to ours. It's going to be educational, laughed a Morvac. We'll finally see what humans are really made of. The betting pools had grown enormous. Millions of credits were being wagered across the galaxy. The odds were so heavily against Juan that betting on him to win would pay out 1,000 to 1. Most people were betting on how quickly he would lose rather than if he would lose. One is even considering that the human might win, observed Master Sergeant Throck as he watched the betting reports. Would you bet on him? Asked Commander Vextel. Throck thought for a moment. No, but I have learned not to underestimate species that survive long enough to reach the stars. While the galaxy watched and wagered, Juan spent every moment preparing. He had 3 days before the fight, and he planned to use every minute. The Academy's training facilities were available to him 24 hours a day, and he took full advantage. But his preparation was unlike anything the alien instructors had seen before. Instead of lifting weights or practicing with weapons, Juan spent hours studying videos of Korath's previous fights. He watched each one dozens of times, taking notes on everything. I don't know, what are you looking for? Asked Myra, who had become his unofficial training partner. Patterns, Juan replied, pausing a video where Korath was fighting a Trainee warrior. Everyone has patterns. Things they do the same way every time. If I can find his patterns, maybe I can predict what he'll do. Okay? But even if, you know what he's going to do, how can you stop him? He's so much bigger and stronger. I'm not trying to be bigger or stronger, Juan said. I'm trying to be smarter and faster. The other human cadets helped however they could. They took turns watching videos, with him pointing out things he might have missed. They helped him practice movements and techniques that might work against a much larger opponent. You're focusing too much on flexibility, said Jinho, another human cadet. Maybe you should work on strength training. I can't get strong enough to match him in 3 days, Juan replied. But I can get flexible enough to avoid his attacks. This approach puzzled the alien observers. Every other species prepared for combat by building strength and practicing powerful attacks, but Juan was doing the opposite. He was practicing how to bend, how to roll, how to move in ways that seemed impossible for a human body. What is he doing? Asked Grax, the Vorthok cadet, as he watched Juan practice in the training hall. It looks like he's trying to become smaller, replied a Trainee. That's the opposite of what a warrior should do. Maybe he's given up already, suggested another alien. Maybe he's just trying to survive as long as possible. Okay. The alien cadets found Juan's preparation methods amusing. Okay. They gathered to watch him practice, making jokes about his techniques. To them, it looked like he was preparing to run away rather than fight. Kid, look at him crawling on the ground, laughed one cadet. Is that supposed to be intimidating? He's practicing how to fall down, said another. At least he's being realistic about what's going to happen. But Commander Vextall watched with growing interest. He had seen many combat styles in his 50 years as a warrior, but he had never seen anything like this. Quan was preparing for a type of combat that didn't exist in any alien military manual. He's not training to fight Korath, Vextall realized. He's training to fight a war. Meanwhile, Korath was barely preparing at all. He spent his time giving interviews to galactic media, discussing Vorthok military philosophy and the importance of strength in determining galactic leadership. This human challenge is a perfect example, he told a reporter from the Galactic News Network. Weak species think they can compete with their superiors through cleverness or luck. Tomorrow, I will remind the galaxy that strength is the only thing that matters. Do you see the human as a threat? The reporter asked. Korath laughed loudly. A threat? He weighs perhaps 60 kilograms. I weigh over 200. He has no claws, no armor, no natural weapons. What threat could he possibly be? He seems to be preparing very seriously. Let him prepare, Korath said dismissively. Preparation cannot overcome the fundamental weakness of his species. Humans are soft creatures who survived by hiding from stronger predators. They are not warriors. The warlord's confidence was shared by most of the galaxy. Military experts on dozens of worlds analyzed the upcoming fight and reached the same conclusion. The human had no chance. This is not really a fight, said General Dexmore, a retired Trainee commander, during a news interview. This is a demonstration of why physical superiority determines galactic hierarchy. The human is brave, but bravery without strength is just foolishness. Could the human possibly win? Asked the interviewer. Impossible, Dexmore replied, unless he has some secret weapon we don't know about. Back at the academy, one did have something that might be called a secret weapon, though it wasn't what anyone expected. On the second night of preparation, he made a quantum communication call to Earth. The call was expensive and took hours to arrange, but it was worth it. Grandmother, he said, when the connection was established. I need to talk to you. His grandmother, Suk, had been a soldier in the Korean War 70 years earlier. She was one of the few people on Earth who understood what it meant to fight against impossible odds. I heard about your challenge, she said. The news reached Earth this morning. Are you afraid? Yes, Juan admitted. Very afraid, Kutsuk said. Fear keeps you alive, but don't let it control you. I fought against enemies who were bigger, better armed, and outnumbered us 10 to 1. We won because we refused to fight their kind of war. What do you mean? Big enemies expect you to stand in front of them and trade blows until the stronger one wins. Don't give them what they expect. Make them fight your war, not theirs. How do I do that? You think, you adapt, and you never give up. And remember, grandson, you're not just fighting for yourself. You're fighting for every human who will come after you. Okay? They need to know that being small doesn't mean being helpless. After the call, Juan felt something he hadn't felt since accepting the challenge. He felt hope. Not hope that he would win, but hope that he could show the galaxy what humans were truly capable of. On the final night before the fight, Juan made one last preparation. He wrote a letter to his family on Earth, explaining his decision to accept the challenge and his hopes for humanity's future among the stars. I don't know if I'll survive tomorrow, he wrote, but I know that humans deserve to be respected as equals in the galactic community. If my fight can help achieve that, then whatever happens to me will be worth it. He sealed the letter and gave it to Myra. Send this to Earth if something happens to me. Nothing's going to happen to you, she said, but her voice was shaking. Maybe not, Juan said. But if it does, I want them to know why I did this. As he lay in his bunk that night, Juan thought about all the humans who had fought impossible battles throughout history. Warriors who had faced overwhelming odds and somehow found a way to win. He thought about his grandmother's words about refusing to fight the enemy's war. Tomorrow, he would find out if a human could surprise the galaxy. He would discover if being small and weak could somehow become an advantage against the most feared warrior in known space. The galaxy was about to learn something about humans that humans themselves were only beginning to understand. They were about to discover that the most dangerous enemy isn't always the biggest or strongest one. Sometimes, the most dangerous enemy is the one who refuses to fight by the rules. The arena was packed beyond capacity. Every seat was filled with beings from across the galaxy who had come to witness what most believed would be a quick demonstration of Vorthok superiority. Diplomatic observers sat in special boxes, representing governments that wanted to see how this challenge would affect galactic politics. The arena itself was massive, designed to host combat between the largest species in the galaxy. The floor was made of reinforced metal that could withstand plasma weapons and the weight of armored Morvac warriors. Energy barriers surrounded the fighting area to protect the spectators from stray attacks. In the viewing boxes, alien military leaders discussed the upcoming fight with confident predictions. "I give the human 2 minutes," said Admiral Corthran of the Dragneri fleet. "Korth will want to make it entertaining for the cameras." "Too long," replied General Mexstar. 30 seconds. "The human will panic as soon as Korth moves toward him." Similar conversations were happening throughout the arena. The general agreement was that this would be educational rather than competitive. The galaxy would finally see what humans were really capable of when faced with true galactic power. The arena lights dimmed as the fight was about to begin. A voice echoed through the massive space, speaking in dozens of languages simultaneously. "Teens, gentlemen, and beings of all species. Welcome to Nexus Prime Arena. Today, we witness a formal combat challenge between Warlord Korth of the Vorthok Empire and Cadet Juan of Earth." The crowd cheered as Korth entered the arena. He walked slowly, savoring the attention. His polished armor reflected the arena lights like a mirror. His claws, each as long as a human finger, gleamed with razor sharpness. He stood nearly 9 feet tall and weighed over 400 pounds of pure muscle in natural armor. Korth raised his arms to acknowledge the crowd's cheers. He had fought in this arena before, always victorious, always dominant. Today would be no different. He would remind the galaxy why the Vorthok were the supreme warriors. "Okay, and now," the announcer continued, representing humanity, "Cadet Juan of Earth." The cheers turned to polite applause, mixed with nervous laughter. Juan entered the arena wearing standard Academy combat gear. He looked impossibly small compared to his opponent, where Korth was massive and intimidating. Juan appeared calm and focused. The size difference was shocking, even to those who had expected it. Korth was nearly twice as tall and outweighed Juan by more than 3 to 1. The visual contrast made many spectators feel uncomfortable, as if they were about to witness something cruel rather than competitive. "Look at them, side by side," whispered a Zephyrian diplomat. "This is not a fight. This is an execution." In the Academy viewing section, the human cadets sat in tense silence. Myra gripped her seat so tightly her knuckles were white. The humans tried to look confident, but their fear was obvious. Commander Vextel watched from the instructor's box, his expression unreadable. Next to him, Master Sergeant Throck shook his massive armored head. "This should not be happening," Throck muttered. "The size difference is too extreme." "It's too late to stop it now," Vextel replied. "We can only hope the human has learned something in his preparation." In the center of the arena, a referee drone hovered between the two fighters, explaining the rules in a mechanical voice. "This is formal combat, to submission or incapacitation. Killing is not permitted, but accidents will not be penalized. No weapons, other than natural abilities, are allowed. Combat begins when I signal and ends when I declare a victor. Korath nodded impatiently. He was eager to begin. Across from him, one stood perfectly still, breathing slowly and steadily. His eyes never left Korath's face. Are both fighters ready? The referee droned. Ready? Korath growled, flexing his claws. Ready, one said quietly. Begin combat. The arena fell silent, except for the hum of the energy barriers. For a moment, neither fighter moved. Korath let out a roar that echoed through the arena, and charged forward with terrifying speed. This was how Korath always began his fights. A massive, overwhelming assault designed to end things quickly through pure intimidation and power. His claws extended, ready to grab and crush his opponent in the first few seconds. But Juan was not where Korath expected him to be at the last possible moment. Juan dropped low and rolled to the side. Korath's charge carried him past where the human had been standing. The warlord spun around, confused and angry that his opening attack had missed completely. Stand still and fight, Korath snarled. But Juan was already moving again. He darted forward while Korath was turning, striking quickly at the back of the warlord's knee before dancing away again. The strike did no real damage to Korath's armored leg, but it was the first time anyone had landed a blow on the famous warlord in years. The crowd gasped in surprise. This was not what they had expected to see. Korath roared again and swung his massive clawed hand where Juan had been. But the human was already gone, circling around to strike at another joint in the warlord's armor. Again, the blow did little damage, but it was precise and unexpected. What is he doing? Asked Admiral Cortharin, leaning forward in his seat. He's not trying to hurt Korath, General Mexstar realized. He's studying him. That was exactly what Juan was doing. Every dodge, every quick strike, every movement was gathering information. He was learning how Korath moved, how fast he could turn, how long it took him to recover from missed attacks. Korath, meanwhile, was becoming frustrated. He was used to enemies who stood and fought, trading blows until the stronger one won. But this human refused to fight properly. He kept moving, kept striking and retreating, never staying in one place long enough for Korath to grab him. Fight me properly, Korath demanded, swinging again and missing. But Juan ignored the demand. He continued his strategy, using his smaller size and superior speed to avoid Korath's attacks while landing quick strikes on weak points in the warlord's armor. The crowd was beginning to murmur with confusion and growing interest. This was not the quick demonstration they had expected. The human was actually fighting back, and more surprisingly, he was not losing immediately. How long has it been? Asked a Draknari spectator. 3 minutes, replied his companion. He's lasted longer than anyone predicted. In the arena, Korath was becoming genuinely angry. His attacks were getting wilder and less controlled. He had expected to crush this human quickly and move on. 2 more important matters. Instead, he was being made to look foolish in front of the entire galaxy. Stop running and face me, Korath roared, charging again. This time, Juan did something that shocked everyone watching. Instead of dodging to the side, he dropped flat on his back and rolled directly between Korath's legs as he passed underneath. The massive warlord. He struck upward at an unarmored joint in Korath's hip. Korath stumbled, off balance for the first time in the fight. The crowd gasped as the seemingly invincible warlord nearly fell. Impossible, breathed General Mexstar. The human is actually making Korath look clumsy. Commander Vextal leaned forward, his eyes wide with amazement. He's not trying to overpower Korath. He's trying to outsmart him. The fight continued, with Juan using tactics that no one in the arena had ever seen before. He used the arena walls to change direction unexpectedly. He feinted attacks to make Korth swing at empty air. He even grabbed onto Korth's armor temporarily, using the warlord's own momentum to swing around behind him. Every move was calculated and purposeful. Juan was fighting a completely different kind of war than anyone expected. He wasn't trying to prove he was stronger than Korth. He was proving he was smarter. As the minutes passed, something unprecedented began to happen. Korth, the undefeated warlord, was getting tired. His massive frame required enormous energy to move, and his repeated failed attacks were wearing him down. Meanwhile, Juan's smaller, more efficient movements were conserving his energy. "This is impossible," muttered Admiral Corthron. "How is the human still fighting?" In the human section, Mira was gripping her seat and whispering encouragement. "Come on, Juan, you can do this." The other human cadets watched in amazement as their fellow human did something that seemed impossible. He was not just surviving against the galaxy's most feared warrior. He was actually winning. Korth, breathing heavily now, stopped his attacks and stared at Juan with something like respect. "You are not what I expected, human," he admitted. "Good," Juan replied, still moving in his defensive pattern. That was the point. The warlord straightened up, his warrior's pride finally recognizing what was happening. This was not the easy victory he had planned. This human had turned the fight into something else entirely. "You have shown me something new," Korth said. "Now, let me show you something old." The warlord's expression changed from frustrated anger to cold calculation. The real fight was about to begin. Korth's change in attitude sent a chill through the arena. The warlord stopped his wild attacks and began moving with a deadly precision that had made him famous across 17 star systems. His breathing became controlled and his movements calculated. "Now you face the real Korth," he said coldly. "I was playing with you before. No more games." The crowd sensed the shift immediately. This was the Korth they knew from the stories, the strategic killer who had conquered worlds through careful planning and ruthless execution. Juan felt the change too. The frustrated, angry opponent he had been dancing around was gone. In his place stood a warrior who had learned from the last 10 minutes and adapted his strategy accordingly. Korth began advancing slowly, cutting off Juan's escape routes with methodical precision. He was no longer charging blindly. Instead, he was herding Juan toward the arena wall where the human's mobility would be limited. "Clever little creature," Korth said as he moved. "You showed me that size is not everything. Now I will show you that intelligence is not everything either." For the first time in the fight, Juan found himself truly cornered. Hayes' hit-and-run tactics had worked perfectly against an angry, impatient opponent. But against this coldly calculating version of Korth, those same tactics were becoming useless. The warlord feinted left, then right, watching how Juan responded. He was learning the human's movement patterns just as Juan had learned his. When Juan tried to roll between his legs again, Korth was ready and caught him mid-roll. "Gotcha," Korth growled, lifting Juan off the ground with one massive hand. The crowd held its breath. This was the moment they had been waiting for. Korth had caught his prey, and everyone knew what came next. But Juan did not panic. Instead, he did something that surprised even himself. Instead of struggling to escape Korth's grip, he grabbed onto the warlord's arm and used it as leverage to swing his legs up and strike at Korth's throat. The blow landed exactly where Juan intended, hitting a nerve cluster that his studies had revealed. Korth's grip loosened involuntarily, and Juan twisted free, landing gracefully on his feet. "Impossible," breathed Admiral Corthron. He turned, being captured into an attack. Korth staggered backward, surprised by the effectiveness of the strike. For a moment, his coordination was affected, and Juan pressed his advantage. He launched a series of rapid strikes at specific points on Korth's armor. each one targeting a weakness he had identified during their fight. The strikes were not powerful enough to seriously injure the massive warlord, but they were precise enough to cause pain and disruption. Korath found himself off balance again, but this time it was not from anger or frustration. It was from a fighting style he had never encountered before. "What kind of warrior are you?" Korath demanded, shaking his head to clear it. "The kind you never prepared for," one replied. The fight continued, with both combatants now showing mutual respect. Korath had abandoned his assumption that this would be easy. One had proven that humans could compete with the galaxy's best through strategy and precision rather than brute force. But the warlord's experience began to show. He started predicting Juan's movements and cutting off his options more effectively. The human was fast and clever, but Korath had been fighting for decades and had faced many different combat styles. Slowly, methodically, Korath began to gain the upper hand. His strikes came closer to connecting. His defensive positioning improved. He was learning to fight a human opponent in real time. One realized that his original strategy was no longer enough. Korath had adapted to his tactics and was turning the fight back in his favor. The human needed something new, something unexpected. Then Juan remembered his grandmother's words about refusing to fight the enemy's war. He had been fighting Korath's kind of fight, even if he was doing it differently. It was time to change the game completely, instead of continuing to dodge and strike. Khan did something that shocked everyone in the arena. He stopped moving and stood perfectly still in the center of the fighting area. "What are you doing?" Korath asked, suspicious of this sudden change. "Something my species learned a long time ago," Juan said calmly. "Sometimes the best way to win a fight is to not fight at all. Surrender." Korath laughed. "You give up?" "No," Juan said. "I'm offering you a choice." The arena fell completely silent. No one understood what was happening. "You have proven you are stronger than me," Juan continued. "Everyone can see that. But I have also proven that humans are not weak. We can compete with the best warriors in the galaxy through intelligence and determination." Korath paused, his claws extended, but not attacking. "What is your point, human?" "Point is that this fight has already served its purpose. You wanted to show galactic superiority. I wanted to show human capability. We have both succeeded." Juan gestured toward the watching crowd. "Look at them. They came here expecting to see a human crushed in seconds. Instead, they have watched us fight as equals for 15 minutes. They will never underestimate humans again." Korath followed Juan's gaze and saw the truth in his words. The alien spectators were no longer laughing or making jokes about human weakness. They were watching with respect and amazement. "You could still crush me," Juan said. "Strength and experience would probably win eventually. But what would that prove now? That the stronger fighter wins. Everyone already knew that, boy." Juan continued. "You could acknowledge that this fight has shown something more important. That strength alone does not determine worth. That different species bring different advantages to the galaxy." Korath stared at the small human for a long moment. The arena remained completely silent, waiting for his decision. Finally, the great warlord did something that no one expected. He retracted his claws and stepped backward. "You are right, human," he said loudly enough for the entire arena to hear. "This fight has already proven what needed to be proven." He turned to address the crowd. "I came here believing that physical strength determined galactic hierarchy. This human has shown me that there are other kinds of strength. Intelligence, adaptability, and courage are also weapons." The arena erupted in shocked murmurs. Korath, the undefeated warlord, was essentially declaring the fight a draw. "I have conquered 17 star systems," Korath continued. "But I have learned something today that I have never learned in all those conquests. The most dangerous enemies are not always the biggest or strongest ones. Sometimes they're the ones who refuse to fight by your rules. He turned back to Juan. You have my respect, human, and you have taught the galaxy something important about your species. Commander Vextel stood up in the instructor's box, his expression filled with amazement. Incredible, he whispered. The human won by convincing his opponent not to fight. Crowd began to applaud, slowly at first, then with a growing enthusiasm. They had come to see a demonstration of power. Instead, they had witnessed something far more remarkable. They had seen a new kind of warrior, one who won through wisdom rather than strength. In the human section, Myra was crying with relief and pride. The other human cadets cheered loudly, their fear replaced by overwhelming joy. As news of the fights spread across the galaxy, military leaders on dozens of worlds began reassessing their opinions of humanity. The species that had seemed weak and insignificant had just proven they could compete with the galaxy's best through intelligence and determination. Juan walked over to Koreth and extended his hand. Thank you for the lesson, Warlord. Koreth looked at the offered hand, then grasped it carefully with his massive claws. Thank you for teaching me something new, Cadet. The arena cameras captured the image of the massive warlord and the small human shaking hands in mutual respect. That image would be broadcast across the galaxy and remembered for generations. From that day forward, no species in the galaxy would underestimate humans again. Taya learned that humanity brought something unique to the galactic community. Not overwhelming strength or advanced technology, but something perhaps more valuable. The ability to adapt, to think differently, and to find solutions that no one else had considered. The phrase, "never underestimate a human," became common in military academies throughout known space, and whenever young cadets asked why, their instructors would tell them the story of the day. A human cadet faced the galaxy's greatest warrior and won through wisdom rather than strength. Juan returned to his training the next day, seemingly unchanged by his victory. But his fellow cadets knew that something fundamental had shifted in how the galaxy viewed humanity. They were no longer the newcomers seeking acceptance. They were recognized as equals who had earned their place among the stars. The galaxy had learned an important lesson that day. Sometimes the smallest fighter carries the biggest surprise.